If you need Spanish translation, there is a little globe at the bottom of the screen that you can click and you'll be able to hear a bat translate into Spanish. Para todas las personas que hablan español y necesitan traducción, los invito a que le hagan clic al circulito que dice interpretation, interpretación, y ustedes van a poder escuchar las respuestas en español. Nuestro compañero Abad va a estar traduciendo. And I will now pass it, like, Holly, do you want to go quickly, and then Ben, and then we'll move on to the candidates? Just do a super quick intro.
I'm Holly Alonso, the Executive Director at Peralta Hacienda now for 20 years. And I'm really looking forward to this debate. It's so important, and we're hoping we'll have a huge turnout of voters in District 5 this time, and for the November 3rd election.
All right.
Abad, or who else? Ben, do you want to go?
Hi, sure. My name is Ben Glickstein. I am the board president for Peralta Hacienda Historical Park, but I will be quiet for this call, and my role will be simply as timekeeper. So folks will have, the participants will have 2 minutes to answer every question, and I've got your 30-second and your stop card, so you can keep an eye on me for that. I hope I'm not stepping on the toes of something that Itzel was planning to say, but I'll just note that this is being recorded, this presentation, just FYI. And second of all, currently, if you're a participant, you won't be able to send chat messages in the chat, but we will, I think I'll leave that up to Itzel to explain. I think open it up possibly at the end. All right, thank you all so much for coming.
Perfect. And let's move on to the candidates, since the youth are going to open up the questions. So they'll go right after you introduce yourselves. So whoever wants to start first.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. Are these intros timed as well?
If you could do 2 or 3 minutes, that would be perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for everyone on the Peralta Hacienda board and all the attendees for inviting me here today. I'm honored to be a candidate at all. It's a real blessing, and I wish more people were given the opportunity to run for local office. But my name is Zoe Lopez-Meraz. I grew up moving a lot due to insecure housing. It's something that I've said in pretty much every candidate forum, but it's really important to me and my identity, and it's my top priority, and my platform is housing for all. That's followed very closely by renewable energy development. I think it's really important to address the climate crisis around us for our youth and for our future, as well as having a more stable and secure earth for everyone. And my third priority is defunding OPD, but it's more than defunding OPD. It's also abolishing the punitive structures and systems that we have, and creating a future of accountability and healing together. As I mentioned, I moved a lot growing up, but I was fortunate enough to end up going to college, where I studied biochemistry and molecular biology. And as such, that's given me an interesting perspective on something like the COVID crisis and how to comprehensive way for public health crisis.
Eso está hablando de todas las cosas que ella está peleando, que de las cosas que le gustan es de acerca de la vivienda segura, porque ella vivió de esa manera. Otra de las cosas que dice.
Diseases that come up. So I hope that I can provide a unique perspective in that regard, and to be really proactive about preparing ourselves for emergency response. And I'm really looking forward to the questions that are going to be asked, and I'm excited that you have some youth on the council as well to ask us questions. I want to empower our youth, and so thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. So, and well, Richard, you're next on my screen. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Al primero, buenas noches a todos. Voy a hablar en inglés por la mayoría del foro, porque nací aquí en California, entonces no hablo muy bien, pero mucho gusto para asistiendo, y estoy muy agradecido. Hey everyone, my name is Richard Santos Raya. I am an Oakland native. recent law school graduate and educator here at Centro Legal de la Raza in their Youth Law Academy. So every day, 5 to 7 p.m., I'm teaching young people about the law, their rights, history. It's been an amazing way to sort of reconnect with this place that I call home and with young people who really mean a lot to me as an educator and just as a human being. I'm excited to bring some energy to this role. I'm excited to fight for the progressive solutions that we know are possible and that we've all been in the streets advocating for the past several years, but especially coming to a head in 2020. Defunding the police and reallocating and reinvesting that money to create healthier, safer communities on every level, from transportation to healthcare, all of it with those funds. And really just being an accessible and straightforward representative in this role. So I'll leave it at that. I look forward to answering more questions. Gracias.
Thank you, Richard. And next we have Councilmember Gallo.
Pues buenas tardes a todos y gracias por la oportunidad. Yo creo que ya conozco la mayoría de ustedes porque yo crecí en esa área y todavía trabajo y mi familia está aquí en el área de Fruitvale. So what I'd like to do is thank all of you for the opportunity to be able to speak with you. Certainly, I know Peralta Hacienda since the beginning. It was came together, and certainly the school below you, Life Academy, I brought that school over from Fremont High School. Started United for Success and built a school, brand new site, a brand new school system with the soccer fields and so forth for our community to continue to grow. The school across the street, A Methodist School, I brought that school from downtown Oakland into the Coolidge Avenue. It's one of the best performing high schools in the state of California, a national distinguished high school with our members of our community going to major universities at 99% of the student body. And I just want to also share with you real quickly that I also help with the repaving around you. We repaved Coolidge Avenue, put on the street bumps to make sure that we have the traffic safety. It's the coming year, we're going to repave Brookdale Avenue, Davis Street, and there are many other improvements. But in terms of a background, my family, we all came out of Fremont High School, Oakland High School, UC Berkeley, Stanford University, and continue to work in the Bay Area and live in the neighborhood. So I know your area extremely well. Education is our priority, and certainly safety is right alongside of that. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to move on shortly to the questions. The youth are going to be asking the questions tonight on behalf of Peralta. But before we do that, I do want to tell you a little bit about Peralta Hacienda and why we wanted to host this forum tonight. For those of you who are not familiar with us, Peralta Hacienda Historical Park is a 6-acre cultural, historical, and community hub in Oakland. And our mission is to engage people of the many cultures that have formed and are still transforming California, and to move towards greater equity, environmental resilience, and a sense of belonging for all. We present art exhibitions and cultural festivals after school and year-long programs for children and teens. I do have to say that the summer camp is one of my favorite programs, which we were not able to do this year, but I'm hoping it's going to come back strong next year, serving low-income children all over the neighborhood. And we wanted to host this forum when we heard that districts 5, 6, and 7 had the lowest voter turnaround in Oakland. And with that, what could we do? And that's why we planned this forum, to give everyone, youth, elders, people of color, low-income people, indigenous voices, newcomer communities, and so on, an opportunity to ask their questions and hear directly from the candidates. And just as a reminder, para esas personas que necesitan traducción en español, hay un circulito que dice interpretación abajo de la pantalla de Zoom, para que pueden hacer clic y van a escuchar a Abad que les traduzca todas las respuestas. And just to make sure, a reminder, Ben is going to be holding He's gonna be our timekeeper, and he's gonna let you know when you have 30 seconds to speak. We do wanna allow each candidate 2 minutes to answer the questions. We know it's very challenging, they're very complex questions, but you know, we tried you to do your best to keep the time so that we can go through all the questions. We had people submit questions in advance, so we wanna make sure that we get to all of them. And you know, finally, I want to introduce our 2 young people currently in Peralta Hacienda's Youth Making History program for teens, Jacqueline and Naniel. If you want to say hello real quick, just so people know you are our youth. And you know, they will take turns asking the candidates questions. So I'm gonna step back for a bit and let them run the show. And Jacqueline and Nathaniel, why don't you unmute yourself so that you can just introduce yourself quickly and you can start asking the questions.
Okay. I'm Nathaniel Maha, and I'm part of the Youth Making History program in Peralta Hacienda, and I'm going to be asking questions today.
And hi, I'm Jacqueline. I'm from the same program, and yeah. So, do you guys want me to get started with the first question?
Sure, let's start.
Yes, I'll ask the first question. So, what is your relationship with the Fruitville neighborhood, and why are you the best representative for its residents?
And why don't we get started with so that we follow that, you know, that same.
Sure. So Fruitvale was actually my introduction to Oakland. I first visited Oakland 10 years ago during my freshman year of college by taking a spur of the moment trip. You know, through connections of friends, I stayed at someone's house in the area for a couple of nights, and I felt very at home with the neighborhood. You know, although I've moved a lot in my life, I always ended up in predominantly Latinx neighborhoods where there are always people yelling, you know, nice things usually, but there's always yelling, a rooster somewhere and lots of kids. It's very familiar to me. You know, I attended kindergarten in Mexico, and I'm a Latinx person, you know, passionate about the community. But my current relationship with Fruitvale since moving to Oakland has been a relationship of care and support. You know, I invite friends that live in other parts of Oakland to hang out in the area because I do really like Fruitvale a lot. And I spend my money here and I spend my time here. I frequently, you know, hand out food and water and masks to jornaleros or day laborers. I contribute to the town fridge that's on the corner of 15th Street in Fruitvale. You know, I posted flyers around the area during the peak of COVID for mutual aid resources. But I believe I'm the best candidate because I really do care about the people. You know, I don't judge people for where they're at. I understand the slippery slope that gets folks into tough situations. I believe that we must be addressing the issues of housing insecurity, food access, healthcare, you know, and safety with systemic, comprehensive solutions. People don't want to subject themselves to the dangers of working on the streets unprotected. You know, we need to be creating a society of care at the city and the county and the state level to help people not just survive, but thrive. You know, we're facing unprecedented times and must be proactive about protecting the people of Oakland through this public health and financial crisis so we can all come out of it in one piece. No one will be left behind if I'm council member. Thank you.
Same question for Richard.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's kind of intimidating to be the best representative for Fruitvale, but I'll tell you why I feel connected to this area. You know, Fruitvale in a lot of ways was my first home, was my first stable home. I was born in San Jose in a big house with a lot of family members, and there was a lot of love, but there was also a lot of instability. You know, my birth mom struggled with drug addiction, and ultimately we lost her to violence when I was 5. Around that same time was when my father and I moved to Fruitvale with my little brother and my adoptive mother. And Fruitvale was really the first place where I set down roots in Oakland. And it has been the place that I continue to return home to all my life. And right when I graduated law school, I knew that I had to move back home. to Fruitvale, to a place that really raised me in a lot of ways. I love Fruitvale and feel loved back by it because it really captures the grand diversity of what it means to be an Oaklander, and specifically a Latin American Oaklander. We're not all the same. We share many things in common. We might all eat masa. We might all, love family, but we're all very different. Some of us grew up speaking Spanish. Some of us grew up speaking English.
I think Richard froze a little bit. Correct. Well, we're gonna come back to you, Richard. Hopefully, you'll come back to us. If not, let us know if you're having any connectivity issues. Councilmember Gallo, same question.
Thank you. It's for me, it's not about what you say, but what you do. And certainly, my tenure, not only serving on the council, but living in this immediate area for many years, I've been able to accomplish many improvements for the Coolidge area, or the Fruitvale area. And surrounding you, you have two of the best high schools in Oakland, California that I helped move to relocate where the old Hamilton Middle School campus was. We brought United for Success, and we also brought Life Academy, one of the best high schools that teaches medicine, that is involved with Children's Hospital, Highland Hospital, and so forth to elevate our student body. And right across the street, we also brought over the Oakland Charter Academy. It is the highest performing school in Oakland today. And our children, our neighbors are able to attend the school. And if you look at their attendance or their performance, 99% of the students go in there, go to the major universities in the United States of America. So we're blessed for that. But at the same time, I help raise money for Peralta Hacienda annually at the city council level to make sure you receive funding to continue your programs here at Peralta Hacienda. We are currently improving the transportation area. Like I said, we're repaving Coolidge Avenue. We did Foothill. We did 35th Avenue. We did Fruitvale. And we're now doing some of the side streets from Davis, Brookdale, and so forth. So for me, it's giving back to the neighborhood that I grew up in. It's my honor, and I'm really grateful to those around Peralta Hacienda that gave me the opportunity to serve. And so for me, I'll continue to be a strong supporter. And certainly we have plans to continue to grow Peralta Hacienda within Parks and Recreation and Public Works. We'll be making some additional improvements to make the program stronger, as well as trying to invite other schools to participate on a regular basis beyond summer, evenings, and Saturdays, to be able not only have the cultural experience, but the educational support, so most of our student body can attend the major universities. And I look forward to continuing that. And I thank you for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Richard, I know you froze for a second. I do want to give you a chance to finish your thought before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was almost done anyway. I think just Fruitvale is so many things at once, and that's what makes it beautiful. It's young, it's old, it's diverse, it's everything. And as someone who still works with Fruitvale Youth through the Youth Law Academy, I'm still learning every day. I'm still learning about what it means to be from here and what it means to give back to a place like here. And, so as a legal professional, as an artist, as a storyteller, as a native, these are all things that make me feel connected to this place and make me feel ready to serve. So thank you.
Thank you. And Nathaniel, would you like to ask the next question to the candidates?
Yeah. The next question is, how did you help the community during the pandemic? What are the major faults the city response had on District 5, and how will you prevent it from happening again? What help and guidance can you provide to the mom community, which had one of the highest infection rates of COVID in the county?
Thank you. And why don't we start with you, Richard?
Thank you. Well, one of the biggest ways that I helped out was I stayed in my house for a month when I had COVID. And, you know, one of my roommates is an essential worker, so we got it pretty early on, and we stayed and sheltered in place. But in that time, you know, I donated my stimulus money to various mutual aid funds here and national mutual aid funds that focus on immigrants specifically. And I signed up to volunteer at a food bank. I also, when the uprisings happened, joined others in the streets to protest for racial justice. You know, I see the struggles for racial justice and justice as it relates to COVID as being linked. So when we talk about justice, an aspect of that is representation in the government and representation from the services that we have in our community. So proper housing, proper healthcare, proper workers' rights, these are all things that could have reduced the damage of COVID to our communities, especially the most vulnerable in our communities, like the mom workers, as you mentioned. And so getting engaged civically, even in the streets, obviously in a safe way, is one way that we can elevate those needs. And it's part of why I decided to run. I figured we couldn't wait for someone with a sense of urgency to fight for this type of equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And Councilmember Gallo, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. When it comes to the COVID-19 experience, we certainly have been involved from the very beginning. And this is where some people don't understand, but from the very beginning, I'm the one of the members that would go to the Alameda County Food Bank to bring food items to the Unity Council at the Transit Village to distribute to the needy families. Not only needy families, but also the senior centers, all surrounding from Posada to Arabella and so forth, to making sure our seniors and our residents continue to get food items. I also currently, still every Tuesday, we pick up 400 boxes of harvest produce from World Central Kitchen. I deliver 50 to the Unity Council. Then throughout the senior centers, the Homies Empowerment, Native American Center, we continuously continue to deliver food items to make sure that our needy families get the service. And I also work with Alameda County to establish the testing sites. It was through our effort of pushing Supervisor Wilma Chan to locate at La Clínica de la Raza, a testing site, as well as including the Native American Health Center to be able to create a testing site to test our community, and also establish a mobile testing site where they are now testing our homeless encampments throughout our District 5. So when it comes to that experience, we're busy, active on a daily basis, not only providing meals to our needy families, but also working through the Unity Council with the business corridors on International Foothill to make sure that they would apply. When they were asked to close down, that they would apply for financial assistance and services, and we currently have a good number of applicants that have received money. We also work with World Central Kitchen to make sure that our restaurants were able to provide meals throughout the city, from the Lucky 37 Filipino restaurant, La Perla, which is a Puerto Rican restaurant, Huarache Azteca, and others in the neighborhood that are receiving support, but yet they're providing services to the neighborhood when it comes to food items. And so we're going to continue to grow that. And I'd like to include Peralta Hacienda. If you ever want to deliver food items, we can get them from you, deliver them to you, and then you go ahead and pass them out to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gallo. And so, same question for you.
So I've been performing regular community outreach since moving to Oakland through distribution of food and water and hygiene items. But this resource was especially needed during the peak of COVID, where information, financial, and material resources weren't accessible to everyone. I volunteer at the Berkeley Free Clinic on the funding team, and I won the clinic a $30,000 grant to continue free healthcare access for the Bay Area. The clinic also built and maintains hand washing stations due to the closure of facilities that were a service to many, and also due to hand washing stations that haven't been serviced by the city in months. I posted flyers around Fruitvale at laundromats, parks, and other areas of the congregation about information regarding mutual aid groups and services to try to connect people to food, healthcare, and COVID information. I volunteered with Unidos en Salud to perform COVID tests for the community. I have built 3 tiny homes and encampments with a group of friends since COVID started to provide more respectable shelter to those in need. You know, my zip code 94601 was the Bay Area's COVID hotspot for weeks, and it continues to report a high amount of positive cases. Information about COVID has not been rolled out equitably or accessibly. You know, while the county has a responsibility to prioritize public health information and its dissemination, the city also needs to activate quickly to inform the public about what to do, what not to do, and avenues for help. You know, you can't just tell people that it's not safe to work and not be working diligently on low barrier emergency financial relief. You can't tell people to wash their hands and not provide places to do so. You know, you can't ask people to wear a mask and not provide any. Like, to this day, a grassroots organization called Mask Oakland continues to be the #1 resource providing N95 masks to the people of Oakland and the Bay Area at large. So I will prevent this from happening by prioritizing robust emergency response plans for a variety of emergencies, because we have to be planning for the worst ahead of time and creating, you know, robust emergency relief funds, investing in renewable energy development, and increasing access to healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And for our next question, we're going to have Jacqueline as the candidates. And we'll start with you, Zoe, after she asks her question.
What positive results have the Oakland Police Department had in the last 10 years? How do you see the demands from the community to restructure the police, and what does that mean to you? And can the community trust the police commission since they are officers with the same training and the same view of the community?
Yeah, so, you know, OPD has been under federal investigation for 20 years now because of their continued misconduct and inability to meet compliance, costing the city of Oakland over $22 million for this external oversight. And since 2015, at least 31 lawsuits against the police department have been settled, costing us $19.3 million. So 20 years of data tells me that this cannot be restructured. You know, we must be investing our budget in public programs and social services that actually help people. Crime rates always rise during a recession. You know, when a father hasn't worked for 6 months because the government tells him he can't, but they also don't provide any resources, you know, what are his options to help keep food on the table? So the actions of our government continue to drive crime rates up by not providing appropriate or adequate resources to survive. You know, for example, the homelessness policy that's up for a vote on October 20th, if it passes, will further exacerbate crime. Already, with the continued sweeps of encampments that have been going against the supposed moratoriums, they're forcing unhoused people into closer pockets together as the city tries to move them all to Wood Street so the sheriff can evict them. And we're already seeing gang-related crimes of opportunity in these communities. So if this policy passes, it's the city's stamp of approval for a Wild West where our unhoused will be further marginalized and victimized by their perpetrators that are being put out of sight and out of mind. And as far as the police commission, you know, it's a civilian oversight group that's under-resourced to perform their duties, and which is why I'm voting yes on Measure S1. It's really important to me to allow them to select an inspector general and city staffing. So we can't just give a green light to much needed commissions without providing the resources that they need to affect change. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councilmember Gallo, would you like to go next? Same question.
Yeah, I think that for those of us who live in the area, we clearly recognize there's a safety need. I mean, right where you're sitting at Peralta Hacienda, I mean, we've had some gang activity. We did provide police presence to deal with that issue. That you had break-ins in your facility, and we did try to address that, and hopefully you still have the cameras in operation above your roof. So I think that there's a need for public safety, and certainly, you know, in Oakland, we're trying to make many changes to make sure that our public safety approach is a positive one to address the needs of our neighborhood, and at the same time provide our officers the training so they're respectful to serve community. And so we're trying to make those changes. The police commission, I was one of the co-sponsors of establishing a police commission that would have oversight of the police department and have the right to fire and hire the police chief. And so that's, with time, it has gotten stronger. Even this evening, we had the meeting regarding in terms of the practices that the police will be able to utilize when it comes to arresting individuals. So we've gotten a lot stronger. We do need additional police support in different areas, specifically, you know, down your creek, down the street. And those are areas that are in serious public safety issues. And so we're going to continue to make sure that the students at Life Academy, the students at Ascend, the students at A Method Public School are able to walk to school and from school. And because certainly at this time we're experiencing the number of robberies when it comes to our young people, and as well as grandma and grandpa and in our homes. So we need to stay together and continue to strengthen public safety to meet our needs, to allow us to continue to grow in the Fruitvale, Coolidge area like we once used to. Thank you.
Thank you. And Richard, you are next. Same question.
Yeah, you know, first, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate the framing of this question. What good things have been done over the past 10 years, and how do we avoid replicating the negative aspects? Because when we talk about defunding or reforming, it is important to say, well, what do we actually want to do, and how can we do it most effectively, and move from there? You know, this morning, I actually spent several hours in a meeting with the directors of Oakland Ceasefire. For those of you who don't know, Ceasefire is a program that started in its current form about 8 years ago to reduce gun violence in Oakland. And that program has been successful. We've seen almost a 10% drop in homicides each year, except for a little spike in 2017. That has severely decreased the amount of gun violence in Oakland. But that said, it's important to note that Ceasefire is a 4-step model, and only one of those steps depends on law enforcement engagement. The other steps, which actually decrease gun violence, rely on credible community messengers to reach out and engage with potential, you know, crime perpetrators on a human level and turn them toward more, you know, pro-social services. So I think Ceasefire is an example of a step in the right direction of using services and community rather than badges and bullets and handcuffs to actually increase public safety with a public health approach. You know, I think there's a common misconception that the police commission is just made up of other police members. No, luckily it's a civilian group that oversees the police, that makes sure that whatever we do going forward is done respectfully, is done with the consent of the people, and doesn't reproduce, you know, brutal patterns on our own people. Anyone out there who's meant to protect us should never be hurting us. Point blank, stop. And I think that's the lesson we've all really learned in 2020. Thanks.
Thank you. And for the next question, Nathaniel, I'm gonna, if you could show your face real quick so that you could ask the next question. And we're gonna start with Zoe for the next question, then Mr. Gallo, and then Richard Santos. Nathaniel, whenever you're ready, go and ask your question.
Okay, what are your thoughts on the Black Lives Matter movement, and how do we move forward with social reform to prevent systematic violence and inequality toward Black communities? And how do you feel about the reopening of Oscar Grant's case?
So, unlike my incumbent, I am not afraid to say Black Lives Matter. And I know that all lives cannot matter until Black lives do. I believe in the power of the people and the power of organizing, and the Black Lives Matter movement is a champion at organizing. There were over 600 rallies a day across the United States after the murder of George Floyd. If that doesn't tell you what the people believe in, I don't know what does. You know, the systemic violence and equality that we see for the Black community is due to our criminal justice system, is due to capitalism and the prison industrial complex. It is by design. Capitalism keeps our communities of color poor and indebted through racist banking practices, through predatory lending, not recognizing workers and their rights, and continuing to provide the greatest tax relief for wealthy corporations. So we know that policing started in the white supremacist community to protect property, property by means of infrastructure and slaves. And it has evolved to the over-policing of neighborhoods of color, counterintelligence operations, and corruption that imprisons innocent people. The criminal justice system uses predatory cash bail to penalize the poor. It assigns unequal time for the same crimes, and it again provides backdoors for the rich to get out of the system. So someone that I really admire is Ibram Kendi. He does a fantastic job at explaining how the historical lens through which you understand racism influences how you engage in the solution. So challenging racist power and racist policy is a never-ending solution. While the public is seeing rapid anti-racist organizing and dialogue, they must also understand that this will all be followed with more sophisticated racist policies and practices. So we have to stay loud and relevant. We have to keep organizing. We have to keep electing progressive candidates that understand this challenge. And as far as the reopening of Oscar Grant's case, I thoroughly support it, and my thoughts are with his family. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And can I have, I believe I said Richard was next.
Thank you. Can you repeat both parts of the question, please, Nanayo?
Okay. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter movement, and how do we move forward with social reform to prevent systematic violence and inequality toward Black communities? And how do you feel about the reopening of Oscar Grant's case?
Thank you. So I'm a huge supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd like to say I'm a member of the Black Lives Matter movement. This summer, I several times went out into the streets to protest around issues of racial justice and police terrorism. I took my best friend to his very first protest, got him tear gassed. I felt bad about that. But I think it's important that, we recognize this is the civil rights movement of our time. You look at pictures of the 60s back then, you look at pictures now, we're getting tear gassed, we're getting chased out of the streets for standing up for something that in even 5 or 10 years, we're gonna look back and realize this is the right side of history, to stand up for Black lives, to say it proudly. There's sort of a caginess, a weirdness in the Chicano community, especially the old school Chicano community of, you want to say all lives matter instead of Black lives matter. You think it means that you can't be a true Chicano if you admit that Black lives matter. And like I said, my mother's Black, my little brother's Black. My father fell in love with a Black person. I know that it just makes us stronger to stand united in issues that do ultimately affect all of us. So I think moving forward, we need to continue to encourage everyone, especially our young people, to flex their democratic muscles, not just at the ballot, but through protesting, through picketing. There are many tools that we have at our disposal, and it's going to take all of us agitating to really change the way society thinks, just the way we had to 50, 60 years ago. Lastly, on Oscar Grant's case, I'm happy that it's opening. It's a sign that the government can bow to people pressure, but at the same time, you're talking to someone who went to law school, so I have all sorts of in-depth thoughts about this. Unless this reopening can help advance us to a place where we end qualified immunity in this state for police, I see a lot of prosecution as largely symbolic, although I do hope that a victory is achieved for the family financially. But I think more needs to be done, and more should have been done 8-10 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. We appreciate your answer. Councilmember Gallo?
Yeah, thank you. And certainly, I know the Oscar Grant family extremely well, been very supportive from the very beginning. And actually, I'm one that made an effort to allow Bart to provide a presentation on remembrance of Oscar Grant right on the Fruitville Transit Village, and working in cooperation with Bart. Secondly, the word all comes up. It's all of us are impacted. For those of us that are call ourselves Chicanos, Mexicanos, Mexican American, Hispanics, Latino, however you define it, this has been our home, and we have suffered tremendously in terms of the violence, the deaths, the robberies, and all the other negative action that goes with it. So I strongly believe, yes, Black Lives Matter, but the other lives matter that are here in the neighborhood that are paying the price as well. And so for me, is how do we change that environment? Because everything we do begins at home and ends at home. We have a school in every corner that if you want to educate yourself, get out of that setting, all you got to do is show up to school and do your work. And so, but one of the things that's missing right now that I'm pushing with my council, growing up here, I mean, I still remember we were killing each other, left and right. But what got some of us or most of us out of that activity, because right now I have over 70-some killings already. And it's not the police killing us, we're killing each other. So the reality is that, you know, when it came, we used to have a youth employment program, so that would allow the high school students. The Unity Council was one of the leaders. We can have a part-time job, a summertime job throughout the year that kept us involved, kept us earning, kept us developing a skill. So we're trying to bring that back so we, in areas like the Peralta Hacienda and the Fremont High Schools and the Casimas and McClimas, where we come back to creating employment opportunities for our high school students, so they will be able to progress, and at the same time making sure that our libraries are open on Sundays. Because many of us, like myself, I can study at home.
Where?
So, but the library was important. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to cut your thought.
Okay.
But we want to keep everyone to 2 minutes to allow everyone to finish their comments. And we see that there are a lot more people that just joined. So just as a reminder, si necesitan traducción en español, aprieten al botoncito con un círculo que dice interpretación y van a poder escuchar a mi compañero Abad traducirles los comentarios en español. And for our next question, I'm going to have you, Jacqueline, ask the candidates. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
3 communities that are growing in Alameda County are Yemen, the mom from Guatemala, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Laotian men communities. Their youth population is in need of opportunities and ways to better prepare for the job market. What is your relationship with them, and how will you make sure they have a solid ground to start their lives in Oakland?
Thank you, Jacqueline. And Richard Santos, we're going to go with you first.
Thank you. I really appreciate this question because, kind of like I was mentioning at the beginning in my introduction, you know, Fruitvale is not just one thing. Our community is not just one way. And using a sort of cookie cutter, old school approach for all of our problems is not going to make everyone feel included. You know, we need creative solutions. We need authentic and empathetic leadership. So at Centro Legal, I've seen and gotten sort of firsthand education how quickly our mom community is growing. And it was kind of ironic, you know, I spent all these years in college learning Spanish, getting ready to serve my community. When I came back, and I come back, everyone speaks mom, right? So I think our needs continue to evolve. And I think what's important is that we listen, we be flexible, and we recognize that, you know, even if we're from here, even if I grew up, you know, playing in Diamond Park and all that, the community will continue to change. And that's actually what makes Fruitvale beautiful, that it's a place where we can all come together y todo el mundo puede ser unidos, right? So the Ocean community, the Mom community, the Yemeni community.
The Yemen community, la Ocean, la comunidad de Laos, de Yemen, de Guatemala van a necesitar programas de vivienda, de educación, para que puedan tener programas con extras capacidades y de lenguaje.
Thank you, Richard. Councilmember Gallo, same question.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I actually work directly and I help.
Trabajo directamente y fundo el programa de Free Level Health Program que trabaja con
City of Oakland. Oakland is a sanctuary, and that's one of the efforts that I left to make sure that whoever came to this city of Oakland, that the police would not interfere with their development. And so, you know, that's working with the Guatemaltecos, El Salvador, and so forth. And I'm also, when it comes to the Laotian families, I work with the executive director to rebuild the Laotian Center. If you go there on 23rd Avenue right now, and 23rd Avenue and East 12, it's a brand new facility that does education, training for young people, training for adults, seniors, job placement. As a matter of fact, I'm helping them right now acquire the motor lodge by the airport so that they can create housing for those that are just being released from prison so they can have a place to live and at the same time receive training from the Laotian Training Center. And so those are activities that I'm involved directly, not just talking about it and dreaming about it. I'm in on the ground floor, working directly from Lao community, the Guatemaltecos, the Central Americans, to make sure that not only they have needy supplies, but also receive education and training. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we're gonna go with Zoe Lopez.
Yeah, immigrant and refugee rights are incredibly important to me. It is detrimental to our culture and our economy to acknowledge borders or other xenophobic practices. We truly are stronger together with as many perspectives as possible. I stand in solidarity with environmental and political refugees across the world, and I vow to expand funding and services to these populations here in Oakland. I will ensure that their needs are captured and addressed with extensive community outreach, because each culture's needs are unique and worthy of respecting. Our youth are our future. The current generation grew up with endless war and economic recession. We need to do better for them. We've seen where previous generations have led us as the world literally burns around us. And we have to ensure equitable access for all youth for education, healthcare, job opportunities, and housing. As someone who previously taught English as a second language to children, I know that knowledge is power, and being multilingual is a powerful resource. So I will ensure that language classes are free of charge while creating a cultural legacy of multiculturalism that makes people proud to speak multiple languages and that continues to contribute to the fabric of Fruitvale and of Oakland at large. As these communities are growing, it's in the best interest of Oakland to welcome them with open arms and to allow for the same business and job opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And next we have Matt Neal. He's gonna ask us the following question.
Okay. The day labor community faces wage theft, physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. Even Home Depot has said they'll close their doors. How do you see their situation today, and how will you resolve it?
And why don't we start with you, Zoe Lopez?
Yeah, part of my support in defunding OPD is it will force that department to prioritize their funding and their staff to only violent crime, and it will deter the collaboration between our local PD and federal agents. So this is one way that I intend to help the day labor community by alleviating that stress that is looming every day. While I wish that, as a city council person, that I could create an avenue to recognize them as workers and ensure benefits, unfortunately, it is out of the purview, but I will exercise all of my powers to expand access to legal representation, financial relief, and healthcare, through the city and through, budgeting that into the budget and funding those services, but also in collaboration with organizations like Centro Legal de la Raza, La Clínica, and the Native American Health Center. It's super important to work with organizations that have been doing the work and know these communities well and provide as much funding and resources as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question for Councilmember Gallo.
Oh yeah, thank you. And like I stated earlier, street level health, the day labor program, I know extremely well. And annually we provide funding sources through the city to keep the program going. We work directly with Gabriela and day labor health in terms of, we identify the locations where we would allow the day laborers to be standing, waiting for jobs. When it comes to the Home Depot, I got a meeting scheduled with Gabriela and the Home Depot manager. I spoke with the state office in terms of making sure that the police officers that we have at Home Depot here in Oakland clearly do not violate their rules, but at the same time that our day laborers clearly understand and follow their rules in terms of the locations we have established, and the rules that we have established that we both have been following. And also, I just want to say that I'm grateful to our day labor program, because they come out and volunteer. They come out and volunteer with me to help clean the streets, to make sure that we have a clean, safe environment here in the Fruitvale area. And so we work very closely together, not only on those efforts, but also when we got to celebrate our culture. You know, the Native American Health Center has the Indigenous Market Day, where we allow other folks from Guatemala that bring in their music, their dance, their food, and their performance to celebrate together with the community here in the Fruitvale area. So we are working together. The Native American Health Center is the one that's taking in our day labor residents, as well as our families from Guatemala. So yeah, I'm very close to that whole activity and continue to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question for you, Richard Santos.
Thank you. So it's clear, regardless of whether our president is Democrat or Republican, that the federal government does not have the best interests of our undocumented community at heart, right? That doesn't mean that Oakland as a city has to be complicit in that lack of care from our nation. So there are many things that cities can do to make their cities safer and more fair and more equitable for laborers, such as those that you mentioned, and undocumented people in general, right? We can create a city bank that will accept undocumented laborers, whether or not they have status. We can create we can create a city ID card system, regardless of status, that still gives people some measure of representation and legality here, especially in their work dealings. We can create better labor practices across the board, so that our undocumented members of the community can be paid their fair share and not be undercut by the system or be preyed upon by predatory employers. And we can continue to funnel funding toward organizations like the one that I currently work at, Centro Legal de la Raza, and other legal service organizations who have specific knowledge of the attenuated needs of those communities. So the world is ours when it comes to putting our money where our mouth is and making Oakland one of those true progressive sanctuary cities, in contrast to many cities across the nation and the federal government. And as we move into the new millennium, 2020, now is the time to start doing all of those things. And we can be a leader in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard Santos. And now we're going to move on to our community questions. It is 8 p.m. and we do want to allow for 30 minutes so we can cover as many of them as possible. We had community members submit questions in advance to the panel. And I'm going to read the first one, and then I'm going to have our youth read the following questions. Our first question is in Spanish from community member Silvia. And I'll ask you in Spanish and then in English. Her question is, ¿qué va a hacer para apoyar a las escuelas y los recursos para que los alumnos tengan una mejor educación? What would you do to support schools and provide resources so students have a better education? And why don't we start with you, Zoe Lopez?
Muchas gracias para esa pregunta. Thank you so much for that question. Education is a gateway, and especially equitable education is a gateway for a lot of people for their future success. And we need to be supporting our kids in schools in all ways possible. We're seeing and we're experiencing now the effects of something so disruptive as COVID-19, where it further illuminates the discrepancies that we see, racially and by income level. And we need to prepare for this to be long-term. It's going to be a while before kids are back in school again with the attention and the resources that they need. And one way that the city council can help with that is, making sure and working in collaboration with groups, like Tech Exchange, to make sure that people have, access to a computer at home for everyone. You can't just send one computer to the house, right? If there's multiple children, they need to have a computer each. We need to make sure that they have up-to-date textbooks. We need to make sure that access to internet is robust so that we don't see things like kids, you know, posted in front of a Starbucks or a Taco Bell on their own without parental supervision, just trying to get their schoolwork done. So we need to be thorough in our community outreach and making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable as elected officials to know the needs of families and kids in school. You know, through defunding OPD and getting $132 million back into our budget, and also progressive tax reform and getting another $40 million annually back into our budget, we'll have the money to be able to fund public schools and public libraries and make sure that kids and families have all of their needs met so that they can succeed in school. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Gallo,
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's education I know extremely well, and I know the realities that exist here in Oakland. And through the City Council, we provide millions of dollars to the Oakland Unified, not only for the restorative justice, the counseling, but also with the COVID-19, we spend millions of dollars to make sure that every child within the school system had a computer, and the instructions and the libraries continue to stay open so they can have access to the internet if they need it so. Pero para la familia que nos dio la pregunta, aquí en esta ciudad, en este país, lo más importante es la educación de sus niños, pero tienen que ir a la escuela cada día, porque en realidadmente en las escuelas de aquí de Oakland hay como 40-50% de la población de los estudiantes que no van a la escuela. So what I'm trying to say that it's really, in this country, the United States of America and Oakland, education is number one. It is the number one priority, but in reality, within some of our schools here in Oakland and throughout, a lot of our students or student body don't show up to school every day. You look at Casamana High School, what, 40-50% absenteeism? Kids don't go to school. The school is there. They're giving you free breakfast, lunch, all the materials, but we make choice not to go to school. And so we're not in school. Where are we? We're on the street. And so those are realities, especialmente con la comunidad latina. Tenemos que apoyar, pero demandar que nuestros niños tienen que estar en la escuela a cada día, y también tenemos que aportarnos para apoyar la familia, pero es muy importante la educación de sus niños. Gracias.
Thank you. And Richard Santos, same question for you.
Muchas gracias por esa pregunta. Es muy importante para mí porque yo actualmente enseñaba en unas escuelas en San José y aquí. Y yo sé por mi propia experiencia los obstáculos que tienen los maestros y las maestras. Para mí, en mi experiencia, uno de los obstáculos más grandes eran los problemas disciplinarios. Y así es donde podemos hacer una gran intervención, apoyando nuestros maestros con otras personas como consejeros disciplinarios emocionales, ¿sí? Que hacen más intervenciones a los estudiantes y enseñan a los estudiantes cómo pueden navegar sus propias emociones. Para mí es importante para preguntar más sobre nuestras escuelas. Sí, a veces los estudiantes no van a la escuela, pero ¿por qué? ¿Cuál es la razón no van a la escuela? A veces es la hambre, a veces tienen que trabajar. Hay varios problemas en un círculo afuera de escuela que son obstáculos por los estudiantes. Entonces tenemos que hacer más programas como consejeros emocionales, pero también para trabajo, pero también trabajo y apoyo a los padres también, porque una escuela es el punto de foco de toda la comunidad. In English, I've taught, so this is super important to me. We have big disciplinary issues in schools that push students out, And the way we address them is not punishing students, but funding more and more restorative justice and behavioral intervention that brings the community back together, because schools are focal points for our communities. And when we fund schools well and assist parents with services, and we've seen this model succeed elsewhere, such as Promise Neighborhoods, we have healthier communities from top to bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And just before we move on to the next question, if you don't speak Spanish and you want interpretation in English, you can also click that interpretation button, and a bat is going to be translated back and forth. So whatever language you speak, I do know, I want to give the candidates, you know, however you want to answer your questions. But for those, if you don't speak one language or the other, you can click on interpretation and you'll be able to get simultaneous translation from a bat. Thank you, Abad. We really appreciate your doing that. And now for our next question, we're going to have Jacqueline as a candidate. So go ahead, Jacqueline.
How will you address the significant increase in crime, specifically shootings? Is gun control part of that solution?
And why don't we start with you, Councilmember Gallo?
Okay. Yeah, certainly. I mean, and certainly surrounding Peralta Hacienda, you're in a hot zone when it comes to shootings. I'm in the same area, and so I hear them nightly, daily, and that seems to be a problem, especially as growing with the COVID-19 issue and the shootings, and we're getting back to where we used to be years ago. And so the reality is we are confiscating a large number of guns. We know there are a good number of our young people that have gone back into the gang activity. And so we are trying to address that problem through the school setting, but also trying to address that problem through the nonprofit organizations like the Unity Council, La Clinica, the Spanish-speaking Citizens Foundations, and trying to reach the family to make sure that we provide supportive services for the student body. And right on Coolidge Avenue, you have that Oakland Charter Academy. These are neighborhood kids, but for, you know, having a school that'll challenge you, you know, they, like I said, 99% of their student body goes to the major universities in the country. And but the difference with that school and some of the public schools there, they require you to go to summer school. And sometimes if you fall behind and can't do calculus, you'll have to show up on a Saturday. And so education is not only a disciplinary, it helps you in the future, but also for me, it was the setting that created a discipline. So when I went home to the neighborhood, to my cousins and friends, I didn't continue their behavior. So the reality is that we need to stay close to our schools. Right now, through law enforcement, we are confiscating the weapons, and we're just trying to do the best you can. So, but we do need the parent support to report it, to call it in, because that behavior right now is out of control. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question for Zoe Lopez.
So prohibition of things has never stopped people from accessing what is being prohibited, right? We saw it with alcohol prohibition. You know, we've seen it with drugs, even though that they're criminalized, people still find ways to access them. And what happens when you prohibit things is it gets more illicit when trying to access those things. So, you know, while I do advocate for better gun policy, eradicating guns is not realistic, you know, especially with people building their own. Now we have 3D printers. You can literally 3D print your own gun. I will continue to say that crimes and an increase in crime rate happens when people's needs are not being met. And we're going to see continued rates of crime, you know, throughout the COVID and financial crisis that is just heating up. You know, some people haven't worked in over 6 months. And unfortunately, because there aren't services provided for them, and because everything that their survival depends on, you know, their housing their car or money to get onto public transportation to go get food, especially if you live in a food desert, you have to go even further. There's a lot of reasons why people are forced into crime. And so we need to make sure that people have secure housing. You know, if their jobs aren't secure because we're seeing the COVID-19 epidemics, we need to make sure that there's low barrier emergency financial relief. We need to advocate for rent and mortgage cancellation, right? The bills are piling up. The stress is piling up. We can't expect people to, you know, just try their best to survive this. We have to be helping at the city and the county and the federal level. We have to be checking in on our neighbors. You know, maybe you can provide a meal that helps your neighbor's family and prohibits another act of crime. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question, Richard Santos.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Zoe mentioned out at the top of this forum, we always see an uptick in crime when there's a recession. We see an uptick in crime when there's economic scarcity. And cities across the nation have seen an uptick in crime during this pandemic. And a lot of social services that people usually rely on, or that usually keep the community intact, have had to be scaled back because of social distancing. I think that one way that we as a city can handle crime and a lot of issues, especially in this year, is to get ahead of it, be prepared, and have a plan. And I don't think we've done a good job of being prepared, being organized, and having a plan, you know, this year. A lot of us, we all read the news articles back in November, December about COVID. Just because the president waited till February or March to do something about it doesn't mean that we had to wait, right? Doesn't mean we had to wait. Moving forward, we can and should allocate enough resources, emergency funds. We have emergency funds for emergencies, and a global pandemic feels like an emergency, to keep programs, like I mentioned earlier, ceasefire, like other social programs that actually reduce violence, going, so that we're not caught vulnerable in a situation like this. You know, it's nothing to dismiss, right? Even last May at a city council meeting, our incumbent was saying that COVID was not a huge concern for our community, you know? So we as a city council need to do our job better, be more organized, and move the money around so we're prepared for situations like this. When you know a crime wave is coming, an illness wave is coming, a scarcity wave is coming, we can prepare for that. We can protect people. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And now for our next question, Nathaniel, if you could introduce the candidates to the next question, please.
Yeah. Do you commit to the goal of the Reimagine Safety Committee to shift 50% of Oakland's police department's budget into social service, housing, and other programs to address safety and well-being? What would you do to help get the city to achieve that goal?
And Richard Santos, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, yes and more. Yes and more. We need to radically reimagine not just what we ask police to do, but what safety looks like and how we achieve it in this city. Well, and really in society at large, whether it's through separate entities, mental health agencies, whether it's through increased infrastructure throughout the rest of society that reduces scarcity and reduces the need for crime. Excuse me, water. This is something that we need to heavily prioritize and manage. And we've seen that when city council members devote their attention to projects, they get done. And when they don't get done. So I would be an active participant in every sort of defund, reimagine, reinstitute process out there, because this is really, you know, my campaign started at a protest around this issue, actually in front of the council member's house. You know, I gave a speech. I talked about needing someone to run. The community told me that I should run, and here I am. And so this is kind of my headline issue, and I heavily support that committee's role and job, and I look forward to building on it as we move forward.
Thank you, Richard. And now, Zoe Lopez, if you want to share your answer with us.
Yes, I'm fully in support of a minimum 50% reduction in the police budget. As I mentioned earlier, that currently is $132 million that we could put back into the city of Oakland's budget. The current estimated financial shortfall from COVID for the city of Oakland is $70 million. So 132 million is more than that. So I'm pretty sure we can be okay by reallocating that budget into much needed public programs and social services. And one way to help make sure that that money is appropriately used and that there's effective change is making sure that all of the organizations and commissions and departments involved have enough staffing. As Richard mentioned previously, a lot of services have been scaled back because of COVID-19, but there also was already this legacy of utilizing temporary positions within the city. So a lot of departments are under-resourced in terms of staffing as well. So we need to make sure that, we'll have that budget again available, because that $70 million from the financial shortfall will be covered, and that still leaves $60 million to be hiring people at full-time positions, making sure that the promises that we're making are actually happening, because it is what you say and what you do that makes change happen in this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Councilmember Gallo, same question.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the city council did reduce the police department by $15 million in July. And we did make a commitment that we're going to continue to make further reductions in terms of services. Right now, the police department is involved in many activities that perhaps another department should be doing. And certainly for those of you that live around Peralta Hacienda, you clearly see there's a great need for mental health services. I mean, you see it down your creek every day. You walk to school, there's some folks, some individuals that do need assistance. But at the same time, there's in this immediate neighborhood, there's also a need for public safety. You can talk all you want, say all you want, but the reality is when somebody's shooting each other next door, I'm not going to call you. I'm going to have to call an officer to come and respond. And you and I know, and your director knows, when you call for public safety, it takes a while for anyone to come here, or they give you that it's not a priority issue and no one ever shows up. And you had the activities sitting there in your facility as well as on your grounds. And I saw it over this weekend, picking up the activity around Peralta Hacienda. I saw what was happening in the apartments across the street. So those are real serious public safety issues that we need to be responsible for, and not just pretend and say all these lovable things, but never show up to make a difference in the neighborhood. So I do agree in rescaling the police department, but at the same time, we gotta work with Peralta Hacienda and how do I create a different discipline for those of us that live here in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And for our next question, our next community members question, I'm gonna ask Nathaniel to introduce a question to the candidates. Nathaniel?
Okay, yeah. Do you support Measure S1? A little background on Measure S1. It creates an Office of Inspector General to review and report on the police departments and the practices of the Community Police Review Agency regarding police misconduct, and allows the Police Commission to hire and remove the Inspector General. It also changes the Commission's and the CPRA's power and duties, and allows the Commission and the CPRA to hire their own attorneys independent of the city attorney.
Thank you, Nathaniel. And can we start with you, Zoe Lopez? Your answer to the question?
Yes, I absolutely support Measure S1. As I mentioned in a couple answers in a couple different ways, we need to further empower our commissions, especially the police commission, by means of city staffing. The city takes advantage of either volunteer or temporary positions. And that's often why we don't see more effective change. And so I absolutely support this measure because it does provide an additional staffed position to empower this much needed police oversight commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And same question for Richard Santos.
Yeah, I undoubtedly support Measure S1. Let me plug in my charger while I talk so I don't cut out on you guys. But I undoubtedly support Measure S1, and I will tell you why. We can't just cut 50% from the police budget and assume that that's going to magically do away with the structural inequities caused or propagated through police. You know, in my youth law academy, I have a whole hour-and-a-half long class on this. I would love to talk to you about it. But the police enjoy so many structural legal pieces of armor that have been built up over 300 years, 400 years, through means like the Supreme Court and the common law that make it nearly impossible to enforce any sort of social justice reforms against them. So defunding, that's one step. An independent police commission, that's another step. An engaged citizenry protesting in the street, that's another step. To get to a point where the people that we are paying as taxpayers to protect us aren't harassing our young people or killing us on accident or on purpose, like happened with Richard Santos Raya, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many more. So Measure S1 is, again, just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. Councilmember Gallo, same question.
Yeah, like I stated earlier, I'm one of the founders of the police commission. As a matter of fact, the neighbors that have first approached me came out of that neighborhood, out of right in the Coolidge Avenues. They approached me with improving public safety. So we left to the police commission. And secondly, I was the one that made the motion on S1 to put it on the ballot, to give it more strength and help clarify the direction. And also within the city council, we did approve the additional attorneys. We did approve the investigators. And so we have strengthened the police commission, and we'll continue to do so. And so I'm the chairperson of the public safety, and I do meet with them on a regular basis. And we want to make sure that the police commission you know, not only delivers on the mission to the public, but helps Oakland grow at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And for our next question, we're going to have you, Jacqueline, ask. So go ahead, Jacqueline.
What support will you offer day laborers during the coming years? How will you work with advocacy organizations to deal with some of the tensions that exist with businesses where day laborers wait for work like Home Depot?
Thank you, Jacqueline. And why don't we start with you, Richard Santos?
Thank you for this question. And, you know, we kind of foreshadowed a lot of answers to this in the past. We can build out a larger support infrastructure for our day laborers and other undocumented members of our community. The city can create things like city ID cards, city banks, funded, you know, free legal services for people in this position to make it safer to work as a day laborer. With regards to businesses where day laborers, you know, look for work, this is an interesting issue because a lot of businesses will maybe take a tough stance, but we all know that there's a symbiotic relationship that happens there. And I think what needs to come first always, the city's priority should not necessarily be the profits of any one business. The city's priority should be human rights. The city's priority should be justice and opportunity for all. So I think it really takes someone who's willing to put in plain terms how we can and can't treat our fellow community members, to go and be an ambassador to those businesses, manage that relationship, as well as at the same time continuing to work with those advocacy groups. You know, I was endorsed by Siren Action, an immigrants' rights group, and I work at Centro Legado de la Raza, working with those activist groups, maintaining those relationships to create an infrastructure where hopefully one day, you know, our day laborers won't have to just wait in a random parking lot for work. There are safe places for them to go look for work and to be compensated fairly for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question for Councilmember Gallo.
Yeah, let me just make it very clear. We do have a city ID program. Anyone can go to the city downtown and obtain a city ID that allows you to seek services in the community and throughout. So we do have a city ID program specifically for those of us that aren't documented. Secondly, when it comes to the day labor program, I believe this year we gave, through the city council, we gave $600,000 through our street level health, and we help raise money through different foundations. So we do support the program. Also, when it comes, like I stated earlier, when it comes to Home Depot, we are working with the management of the day labor program to make sure that we continue to work together and support each other. And but we need to respect the rules that we do have. And throughout the neighborhood, in terms of educating our children and supporting those that are undocumented, as they say, or don't have an ID, we have a very clear directive in the city of Oakland that we're not going to stop and make the arrest or have the federal agents come into the city to arrest people. So we're at the council level and at the neighborhood level, we have worked with this activity for many years, from the Unity Council to the day labor. As a matter of fact, I'm one that started supporting Centro Legal de la Raza, gave them millions of dollars, not only dealing with tenant issues, but also defending the neighbors on the streets here in the Fruitvale area. And I'm the one, I catch a lot of criticism at the city hall, but I'm the individual that provided the millions of dollars for Centro Legal to continue to serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And same question for Zoe Lopez.
Yeah, I think we can further support this community by making sure that access to information is accessible, that information is accessible. We know where they congregate, right? I don't see any information there about what help is available to them. And I hit these locations multiple times a week with masks and water and ask them what their needs are within my capacity to help them. As far as food, water, hygiene items, that's something that I can do. I'm not yet a council member, but maybe that'll change and then I can come back and give them more help. So we need to make sure that all of these programs that exist in theory in the city are known about in these communities, and doing that street outreach, that footwork, boots on the ground work, to make sure that people know that there is help available for them. Because there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in reaching out to city officials or going onto a city website or utilizing any city or county funded resources because of the possibility of being reported, right? So we need to both do better at community outreach and also do better about making it clear that we won't collaborate with federal agents in any way so that that fear is eliminated. And unfortunately, as far as, Home Depot saying that they're going to close, that is misinformation. There was a citizen who does a lot of, fact checking, and he actually emailed one of the spokespersons of Home Depot, and they have no intention of closing. It's the only Home Depot around, and a lot of construction that's happening 24/7 in Oakland needs labor, and unfortunately, because of the undocumented status, people take advantage of day laborers because they can pay them under the table for much less than they deserve. So, these businesses aren't going to close, but we can do so much better at providing care and material resources, and also helping people become recognized workers so that they can get paid more and have better legal representation. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are a bit over time. So, sadly, we're not going to be able to get to all the community questions, but we invite everyone watching to check out the candidates' website so you can learn more about them and their policies. And before we officially say goodbye, I do want to allow each candidate 1 minute to say any closing statements for community members. Why don't we start with you, Councilmember Gallo?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to to have served the transit, to have served the Fruitville area, District 5. And I know the neighborhood extremely well, and I continue to support it. You know, whether it's a day labor program, the Unity Council, La Clínica de la Raza, Centro Legal, the Native American Health Center, and the schools in the neighborhood, Life Academy, United for Success, Fremont High Schools, and we're going to continue to grow the Coolidge Avenue area in terms of continuing to improve the roadways. They're on the list to be done. And but I just want to thank all of you for the support, and for the students. You have an opportunity. We have a school on every corner. All we got to do is show up, do the work, and and do the best so we don't continue to live the way we do. Thank you, and appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gallo. And again, for those of you watching, our team at Peralta Hacienda just shared the links of everyone's website on the chat, so you can check out the links there. And next, Richard Santos, your closing statements.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about taking all my legal knowledge, my community experience, my creativity, my energy, and serving this community that I love. We got to run, but you have our websites. Please look us up, email us for more information. Gracias a Abad para ser traductor, gracias a los jóvenes, y gracias a todos esta noche. Nos vemos.
Thank you. And Zoe Lopez, your closing statements.
Muchas gracias para todos que están aquí con nosotros. Thank you so much, everyone that was able to join. I just want to use every possible chance to remind people that they have, you know, strength as an individual and strength as a collective body. I want to encourage everyone to find ways to plug into their community. You know, start like a little neighborhood community watch, figure out what you guys need and help fill any pockets that are there. I'm so grateful to be a candidate in this election. I wish that everyone had the opportunity to run, and hopefully moving forward, we can get rid of those barriers that keep a lot of really fantastic people out of local politics, because change is coming, and you know, we're just getting started. So I'm really appreciative for sharing this time with you, and gracias, Guascomati, thank you.
Thank you for everyone, and thank you to every single one of the candidates for joining us today and participating. It really means a lot. And like, special shout out to the youth for asking all the questions and being so amazing and professional. We appreciate you. And we also want to give a shout out to Gabriela from Street Level, who submitted like some of the questions about street laborers. Thank you for looking out for our community and our jornaleros. And thanks again, everyone, and have a good night. And don't forget, go vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Cool. Thanks, Ben.
Work. You guys rock.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye, everybody.